And it just like a tidal wave hit me of every moment somebody had ever like talked to me about my drinking, how I was living my life, how it was affecting them, why it was bad. It hit me and I heard it. I heard it. I felt it for the first time.
Hello, and welcome to the Rise Again podcast. My name is Dr. Peter Risenen. My passion is people, harnessing their potential and the positive impact that makes on our world. On this podcast, I interview guests who share their journey of tapping into their resilience, strength, fortitude, and mental toughness required to rise from the ashes and live a fulfilling life. My purpose became very clear to me after I experienced a traumatic brain injury and a near-death experience in 2010. Months after that accident, I embarked on a bicycle journey from the Pacific to the Atlantic Ocean, 4,400 miles over 55 days across the United States and Canada, from Washington State to Maine, in a quest that started me on my path doing what I love. To be surrounded by God's created nature and the people He created to give me insight on my quest to live my best life and help others create that for themselves. I believe we all grow tremendously through our adventures and misadventures. My ventures in hormone optimization, integrative medicine, counseling, my own marriage, and the fostering and adoption of my beautiful son have allowed me to create a different future, untethered from my past, allowing me to live the life I've always wanted, to pursue what matters, and more importantly, to help others do the same by working with them to create a resilient mind and body, as well as a purpose-filled spirit needed to live a life of thriving. Welcome to the journey. It's time to rise again. If any of these guests speak to you, do the next best thing and reach out to them. Each guest has a wisdom that only they can have from their own unique experience. Your journey awaits. Let's get going and start taking that next step together. Through the work I do as a medical director of a men's health and hormone optimization clinic in Arizona, as well as the medical director for a nonprofit catering to providing the best of integrative care to military veterans, foster and adoptive families, people experiencing low and fixed income, and health professional students in training, I love what I do. I hope you guys enjoy this podcast. Let's all do the work and follow the steps to rise again. Hey, everybody. I know you guys are going to be inspired by today's podcast. I just want to give you a heads up. It's a long one. We really enjoyed. I flew through the time that we were together on this podcast, not even understanding how long it was going because it was so riveting. You're going to hear today from a good friend of mine. His name is Cole Armstrong. He came to my office. We ended up having a full and thorough expose of his addiction after being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. His going off the deep end with alcohol and what ended up being his rock bottom in college, and then his recovery. And now he's helping men in recovery and women in recovery here in Scottsdale, Arizona. And he has a better manage on his type 1 diabetes with a very unconventional approach that's not really taught by most physicians. So he's just done this absolute full hero's journey, and he's on the other end here. He's got a new baby named Dash, and life is just going so well for Cole. I really just want you guys to be inspired by Cole. Let him know how inspired you are by his story. Reach out to him. He is going to be writing a book, I would imagine. Be kicking that off here soon. That's one of the things that I'm hoping that he does for all the people out there who could be very touched by his story. But I hope you guys can really get something out of today's episode. Maybe there's just a nugget in there for you. Maybe you've not dealt with addiction as Cole talks about it or anything else, but maybe there's something in your life that you're just hung up on, and that's just running the show. And maybe you can just show up as a different person because of the perspective that you get from Cole with the podcast today. So with all that being said, let's get right into the episode today with Cole Armstrong. It's amazing how widespread juice is in the community. I could get a lot of young guys who come to the practice. And it's just kind of I just kind of almost expect it. I'm like, so when you were in high school or college or whatever, like, you know, when you tried steroids or you tried testosterone, how did it go? You know, almost like, how did it go instead of like, did you use it? And they're usually like, yeah, you know, I did use it for a couple of years or whatever else, you know?
So is it like med seeking at that point, or they're truly like they've messed up their hormones?
No, they're med seeking.
Yeah. Okay.
They're looking for performance enhancement.
Yeah. That's what I figured. And that, you know, it's it's not going to make a difference for you guys whether like you turn them away or not if they're med seeking. Like you'll still help somebody, not like unethically, but you'll give them what they want.
I'll do it the right way.
Yeah.
If they're looking for it, and I will monitor it, and they will not be able to do what they really were doing before, which was using as much as they wanted and to get whatever results I'm all about this for long-term health and wellness.
Yeah, that's the thing I think too, is like when those kids that are doing it in high, nobody's looking out for their health. I mean, they're just doing it. They just think, and they know, and people tell them like, if you do this amount, you'll see these results, and that's it. It's not like this is what it's going to do to your cardiovascular health. You know, they're just going for it.
Yeah, their buddies are doing it. They hear about it. They're like, hey, you know, and they want to get whatever scholarships or whatever else they want to perform.
It gives you the edge.
Totally an edge.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's crazy.
It is.
So my wife, she was a professional bodybuilder for quite some years. And like IFBB, I think she almost got her card. She won her first like few competitions. I mean, and you should see some of these pictures of her. This is like years ago too, well before I met her. And she was 100% vegan. So it is incredible like what she was doing. And her ex, he was a bodybuilder too, but he was juicing like on some pretty crazy stuff, and he sold it. So she was like exposed to that side of things, and she tells me about it all the time. And just the world of like not only competitive bodybuilding, but just people that are serious about it in any way in the gym. Like 90% of them are on some sort of drug, some sort of enhancement, some sort of. Very rarely is somebody natural. And I found that hard to believe because I was gullible to think like, you know, people can just get it done regularly. But like apparently that's not the case. And I didn't know that. It's weird.
Yeah, especially in that competitive space. I've had some guys come to me and they'll be like, hey, I was on, they'll tell me what stacks they're on. They call them stacks, you know, and they're like, hey, I'm on a stack of like, I've got this testosterone, then I've got these other steroids on top, like Deca or Nandrolone or whatever else. And I've got these different things and I'm doing all four of them at the same time, when what we're using is a fraction of one of them to achieve great results in like mental clarity and health and wellness and just feeling of well-being and results generally. You get a guy who's coming to you on 4 different performance enhancing drugs and they have no idea that it affects their cardiovascular system, that they might have an enlarged heart. They might die of cardiac failure someday because of that. You know, people just don't know what they don't know. And so to have somebody go, oh, and to plant that seed of doubt as to like, this might be a good thing to do. It's like, that's a good thing to have happen, is that they actually start doubting that they're in, you know, total control of how they're going to feel. So
yeah,
it's so cool to finally have you on the podcast.
Yeah, man, it's an honor.
When was it that we met? It was a few years ago, at least.
It had to have been 2020.
Okay. Was it 2020?
I think, yeah, that sounds about right to me. You were at that office off of Greenway, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah. We were still at our old Cornerstone clinic, and somebody, it might have been Karen, it might have been Estel, somebody there told me about you. And because I was expressing wanting to actually find a therapist to navigate some challenges that I was having with diabetes. And I wanted to really sit down with a psychologist and work out those things. But little did I know what I really needed was some more coaching around my lifestyle with it, my diet, my habits and stuff like that. And then that's when the recommendation for you came in. I think it was actually Karen, because she was talking about how you were studying to get a, what do you call that? A license or like a counselor certification or something like that. And she gave me your information and I reached out and the rest is history. We connected and here we are today.
I just still remember that first visit. I still remember that. And I remember meeting you the first time. And part of me, like when I get introductions where I've not really worked very specifically, you know, like I'm getting a new recommendation for like a new issue that I really haven't done, like in the trenches, urgent care type work with it, right? It's like you get someone who's really well managed, and then on certain conditions, it's like with you, I just had to take it on faith that we're going to figure it out. You know, everything worked out great.
Yeah.
Let's take it back for everybody, like where you grew up and then how you even got to that, how you even kind of got to that spot, right? I mean, just give us the whole backstory because you've got a story to share.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mean getting to the spot of like wanting help around it or like wanting to work on it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's important. That definitely wasn't the case in the beginning, especially with my diabetes. But like, I mean, you go back to just my childhood and growing up, I'm from Florida and just loving family, like two present parents, man, two caring older brothers. I didn't have the traditional brother relationship where you're fighting all the time and it's just, you're wrestling. Like, yeah, we played around, but we were all very like supportive of each other, very kind and respectful to each other because that's how we were raised. So it was a very supportive is honestly just the best word. Like,
Sounds good.
It was a very supportive and loving household. And I've learned now non-confrontational household now being married, and like I'm learning more about how I'm very non-confrontational. And I know that a lot of that comes from the way that I was raised. We all just wanted the best for each other. So that's kind of just the way that it came out. There's some deeper rooted issues there too, as far as like suppressing your feelings, your emotions. I learned that from my dad too. Not, men don't cry, that kind of,
tough it up.
That kind of demeanor. Yeah. So that I took that with me growing up, and I kind of just was a very reserved kid. I wanted desperately to be outgoing though, but I just couldn't. I had this fear of people not accepting me and not liking me. I'm an alcoholic. I'm in recovery. And long before I picked up a drink or a drug, I had these tendencies that you see a lot in Alcoholics Anonymous and with people in recovery, that it's just funny when I think back about it, how I was exhibiting those behaviors before anything ever really hit my system. Just as a kid growing up, I was acting that way. And then kind of fast forward a little bit, I played every single sport imaginable. So did my brothers. So we traveled all the time for sports. It was something that we really enjoyed. Basketball was my primary. I had a blast doing that, man. And then drugs get introduced. When I'm about 13, I start smoking weed. And that doesn't really take me away from anything. It was just a way to kind of hang out with my friends. My parents hated it, obviously. There was some discipline there. There was some backlash there. But I just, I was participating in it because it was going on around me. So the main issue in my life really started with type 1 diabetes. And that was April 8th of 2013. I got it tattooed on my arm right here. Maybe a month before that, I start to have these symptoms. I'm peeing all the time. I'm constantly thirsty. My vision starts getting blurry. I start getting nauseous, throwing up, just chronically fatigued. Like I said, I played a lot of sports. So I knew what it was like to be sore and be tired from playing like a soccer game or something. But this was just like blatant, like I didn't do anything and I am exhausted. So I did have some awareness around my body, and these things happening, they finally became a cause for concern when I was in class one day and the teacher was asked, I was maybe in the middle of the classroom. The teacher asked me to read something off the board and I couldn't read it because my vision was so blurry. And I don't have vision problems. I have perfect vision. I've never wore glasses in my life. So that's when I knew, like, why can't I see?
Interesting.
And then the next morning, I woke up and I threw up and I was like, all right, what is going on? Like, I'll never forget this. I grabbed my laptop, I Google all of my symptoms. And then as soon as I hit enter, it went to that next page, everything black, bold, diabetes, all over the page. And I'm just like, this is weird. And like something within me knew right in that moment, was like, wow, I have diabetes. Don't know what that means. No idea what that means. I remember being a kid in Michigan. I have a lot of family in Michigan. My parents are from there. We used to go visit my grandma out there all the time. And there was this kid across the street who would come over and hang out and play with us. And he had diabetes and I know that now because I remember back and he was like checking his blood sugar at the table and stuff like that. And I never really paid it too much attention, but that was like my only exposure to diabetes. I just remembered that kid checking his blood sugar. And I was like, okay, so what does this mean? Like, am I going to have to do that now? I don't know. I went out to the kitchen where my mom was like making breakfast and I told her, I was like, hey mom, I think I have diabetes. And she laughed. She was
Really?
like, what do you mean you don't have diabetes? Like, what are you talking about, Cole? I was like, I don't know. You guys know I've been feeling weird lately. I just Googled everything and it says diabetes all over the page. And she was like, we can go to the doctor after school, but you don't have diabetes. So I was like, okay. Well, that whole day at school, I mean, it was weird because like I didn't know my life was about to change, but I knew that something was up.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I couldn't read anything, man. Like I remember too vividly, I had like a gym class and we were doing like warm-up laps and there's the banners on the wall.
Oh yeah.
Like all the banners. And I was just running. I was like, I can't read a single name. I can't even see what the team says or the year. I was just, I can't see anything. I feel like crap. I probably went to the bathroom like 30, like I kid you not, man, like 30 times. The teachers were like, Cole, I can't let you go to the bathroom again. I was like, no, you don't understand. Like I have to pee.
I have to go.
Like I have to pee. Didn't know my blood sugar was like over 400, but they're just like, Cole, like, why are you trying to get out of class right now? I'm like, I have to pee. And I'm drinking so much water. I'm drinking Gatorade and stuff like that.
Amazing. So the end of the school that day.
Yeah. So my mom picks me up and we go to the doctor. And of course, we stopped at this Barnes & Noble for something. And there's a Starbucks in there. And my mom's like, do you want to get a caramel frappuccino? Loved caramel frapp, get the large one. I was like, sure. Yeah, let's get it. It's like the worst thing I could have got at that time. But my blood sugar was already so high. It was already up there. So it's just ironically got a large caramel frappuccino right before
on the way to the doctor's office.
On the way. So I mean, yeah, we went and saw my pediatrician because I was 15. It was like a month before I turned 16. So still at the pediatrician. He did a couple of tests. He asked me to pee in a cup, and I'll never forget this moment too when he came back in and he just like. Known this guy my entire life. He's known my, parents for a long time. 2 older brothers went to see him too. So like we're very close with this guy. And he was heartbroken because he knew what it meant, this diagnosis. He was like, yeah, I'm sorry, Cole. Cole's got type 1 diabetes. Whatever he said about the urine sample, his words were like extremely elevated glucose in the urine, this, that. Like he needs to go to he had like a hospital in Jupiter, which is like Jupiter, Florida, like 40 minutes from our hometown. He's like, you got to get there like as soon as you can, like probably right now. Again, I didn't really know what diabetes was. So I took that face on. I was like, okay, like let's, whatever we got to do. And my mom's crying. My mom's just destroyed. She doesn't know what this really means either, but she knows it's serious because she could see it on his face.
Change, right?
And yep, she's just like, she's like, okay, we're going to do this, giving me a hug, kissing me and stuff. Like, we're going to be okay. I was just like, yeah, I think so. I don't know what's really going on. Like, I had no idea. Had I known what diabetes was, I probably would have been freaking out. I probably would have been like, oh, no way. Like, no way. But I'm kind of glad that I didn't at that time because I was able to be more present through it for sure. And kind of just like listen and take things as they came. And went back home, talked to my dad on the phone. He was kind of the same way. Like he didn't really know what was going on, but he knew it was pretty serious. So him and my mom took me to that hospital, packed a little bag, went. I was wearing, so this was actually April 8th. We're diehard University of Michigan fans.
Oh yeah, you guys bleed.
And
this blue,
day was the national championship for basketball. And Michigan was playing, I think it was Louisville. Or somebody, but they like my dad and I were planning to watch it that night, and then this happened. So it was just funny how like very serious health diagnoses, but my dad and I are also like, how are we going to watch the game? What's going on here? We got to go to the hospital, right. But like, is there going to be a TV there?
Right.
And it was so funny how that all went too, because like they did their admittance process. They checked my blood sugar was 436. So I actually by doing what I did, I caught it early. I wasn't really in DKA. I had some ketones, but I wasn't as far along as some people are. Like I've heard 700, 800, 900, like borderline falling into a coma, losing weight. I didn't really lose weight. It was hard for me to tell. I might have lost a little bit of weight, but I had nothing significant. And that's one of the major symptoms that happens is some severe weight loss before the diagnosis.
Well, just for anybody, just a super quick explanation is your body, so you stop making insulin, right? Mm-hmm. And so what ends up happening then is insulin's needed to open up your cells to like essentially to allow sugar into the cells where it's actually processed. Well, when that's not working, I mean, you need insulin, but you're not making it anymore. Those cells are destroyed in your pancreas or being destroyed. So you've got really high blood sugar. Well, your body if it can't burn sugar, it's got to go to the next available substrate, which is fat. Well, then your body starts breaking down fat into ketones. Everything starts to get thrown off your acid-base balance in your blood. You start to become really acidic. Your body, right, still wanting sugar. Your sugar levels are sky high. Your body's still making that, and it's got high ketone levels. You're screwed until you get some insulin.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So here you are showing up. You do the pre-admittance, 436.
Yeah, we do all that. My dad and I were really pushing, like, can we get a room with a TV? Because it was like those little hospital rooms beforehand. And God bless this one nurse. Like she moved mountains to get us in a room with a little TV, and she made it happen. And like that. Just one of the most like just surreal moments of my life, being in the hospital, like that little foldable TV, watching that national championship game with my dad, and just this looming like
What was coming was
uncertain,
big, man.
uncertain, next step of my life. But just for that moment, like we could sit there and watch that game and talk about Michigan, and
life could be normal still.
yeah, life could be normal. But that was the last part of that. And then we got moved to a hospital room. This was pretty late at night by this point. They told us the bulk of everything would start to happen tomorrow. Only one parent could stay overnight. So my mom stayed and my dad was leaving. And this is when I knew it was serious, because my dad's a very reserved guy and doesn't show a whole lot of emotion. I think the only time I had seen him cry was when his brother died. I can't think of another time at this point in my life. And he came over and he kissed me on the forehead. I'm a 15-year-old kid. He hadn't shown me anything like that. And since I was little, probably. And as soon as he did that, I realized, oh shit, this is serious. Like, why did he just do that?
Oh, kiss on the forehead. That was it.
That's when I knew. I was like, this is actually a little bit more serious than I thought, just because of that right there. Not anything the doctors had told me, not seeing a high blood sugar, that little emotional moment right there. I was like, damn, this is what's going on here. And the next couple of days were so overwhelming but like I said, because I didn't know anything about it, I was listening. I was, taking notes. I was taking their packets. I was, just absorbing everything. I met with like 5 different specialists, one to show me about Humulin and Humalog insulin, how to inject it, what it does. I spoke to a nutritionist about eating, and that's something we can get into because, like, oh my God, like they were saying you can eat 30 carbs at breakfast, 40 carbs at lunch, this, that. And like, I'm just looking at that like, okay, I didn't really know about carbs, fat, and protein. Yeah. But like, I didn't know exactly the macro breakdowns of everything, but I knew that 30 grams of carbs at a meal was not a lot. So I was kind of like, okay, that seems kind of shitty, but all right, we'll go with that. And then, I saw with doctors about like my vision and just a few other like so many different doctors. And I was thinking like, man, I gotta see this many doctors every year now. And they're like, yeah, like you need to do these checkups every single year. Here's an endocrinologist. They got us hooked up with an endocrinologist and everything like that. And after those few days of just shooting a fire hose of information right in your face, they give you a little discharge bag with everything, some prescriptions, and that's it. That's it. There was no, here's some support groups. There was no like, here's something to reach out to look into. It was just kind of like a, in and out. Here you go. See you later. And I viciously looked after it the first few months. And I was still in my honeymoon phase where your pancreas is still producing a little insulin, but slowly stopping. So I saw really good results those first few months. I wrote down every single thing that I ate. I tracked everything. I gave myself the insulin at the proper times. I was on point until I wasn't. Until I hit, for the first time in my life, burnout and started to experience real depression and real anxiety for the first time in my life. And I did not know how to deal with that. It was too much, man. It was 24/7, 365, every waking moment. And I went from not having to worry about what I was eating and like anything that goes around that. I just ate food and like when I was hungry, like that's what I used to do. And then I went to this regimen of,
you're the most strict, regimented person that's out there, really. I mean, all of a sudden you have to understand everything about food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to go from, the complete opposite side of the spectrum from that, I could not handle that. And that's when I found alcohol to cope. Was probably 6 months after my diagnoses, and I'm just burnt to a crisp. So I had never like gone to a therapist. I'd never done anything really for my mental health up to this point because I didn't have to. There was nothing in my life that came up.
You were coping okay.
Yeah, I was coping just fine. And then rather than talking to my parents or talking to somebody and being like, hey, I feel this way, I think I need to do something about it. I just remember being with a group of friends. We were somewhere. I still to this day can't remember exactly what was going on, but I remember taking a drink and my thoughts are racing. I'm all up in my head about diabetes and just everything else. And I took that drink and it just, everything shut off. And I'll never forget that moment. Everything just shut off. And I was like, I'm okay. And it's almost, I forgot to say this earlier, it's almost the same. So when I was in the hospital and I got admitted, I think probably to this day, the most relief I've ever gotten was when I was diagnosed and they gave me an IV drip of insulin and I felt that and I was like, whoa. Like the insulin bringing my blood sugar back to normal range. I was like, whoa, I feel great. I feel okay, as I'm supposed to feel.
Yeah.
And then I got DK another time because when I was like 19, because my pump was bent and I wasn't getting the insulin and I had just gone to bed, just horrible timing. And I woke up with some pretty severe DK symptoms and had to go to the hospital. And
that's emergency. That's when type 1 diabetics, you learn in medical school, that's when they're possibly, coma and death can await if you don't fix that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is serious and you're in the hospital, you get that fixed.
Yeah, like you were saying earlier, diabetic ketoacidosis, and it took forever for me to get back there, but I finally got back there and got on an IV insulin drip, and just that relief it's crazy. When you don't have insulin and then you get insulin, you feel that. And
you're talking to people, most of us listening have no idea.
Oh, you can't.
They've never even thought about the word insulin.
No.
I mean, they maybe heard about it on a blog, somebody saying like, oh, well, this raises your insulin levels. And they're like, who cares?
Yeah,
like,
what does that mean?
What does that mean? Right.
Yeah, your body's just doing it for you.
Yeah.
I can compare that feeling of relief to that time I drank and it shut my brain off and it made me feel okay. And
wow.
From that moment on, it was, this is what I'm going to use to cope and be okay. It was alcohol.
Mm-hmm. And so you were 16?
I was 16 years old. And literally right from there, it was, I'm drinking every day. I'm drinking every single day.
Because it made you feel so good.
I felt okay.
You felt normal.
I felt okay. That's the best way for me to put it, is I felt okay. And, it was like so what? I have diabetes. Like I can accept that and I can be okay with that, just because of the effect that alcohol gave me, the ability to cope with that the same way you would doing anything else. And it got out of hand so quick. I mean, I was.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the spiral. I mean, anybody listening to the podcast is like, Cole, you already hit rock bottom. You got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, right? No. Like, it doesn't, like, this is just getting started, guys. Like, so we're going to launch into this now.
That was really the beginning. That was the catalyst for everything else that happened in my life. I mean, up until this point, like I said, I didn't really have a whole lot of hardship. So this was like the one thing that, I was being tested with. And I just did not take it well. I'm up early every morning to make sure I get up before my parents so I can sneak a couple of water bottles full of vodka into my backpack to take to school.
Full of vodka?
Full of vodka. 2 16 fluid ounce water bottles.
Wow.
And I would just bring them to school and I would just drink them throughout my day, keep that level. Cause it like I said, man, it made me feel okay. So that was my medicine. That was my medicine.
Did you even know how destructive it was, really?
No. Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah. You just know it made you feel good.
Yeah.
Like, well,
I did not know what I was doing to my body. I did not, like, maybe I had some idea that alcohol wasn't good for you, but nothing to deter me in any way, shape or form.
Okay. So you sneak out the door.
Yep. And I never got hungover. So that, there's the thing right there is, I've met a lot of people like me that also are like, yeah, I never got hangovers, and I think that also, had I got severe hangovers, that might have like slowed it down a little bit, but
there's no pain involved.
I bounced back, right? Like just fine. So like I would drink all day. So my junior year is when 16 going to 17 is when like this started, this time period. Because I was diagnosed at the end of my sophomore year. So going into summer is when I was really on top of it. And then I got burnt out going into my junior year of high school. And then that's when the drinking started. I didn't play sports that year because I had a controversy with the basketball coach and everything. So I was just like, I'm just going to take this year off, work out, be in shape, have fun with my friends. And that's what I did. And like I drank every day at school. And then I would go to the gym after school. Like it blows my mind how like I was able to operate.
Seemingly keep it all together, right?
Yeah.
From the outside, you had it all together.
School, like, I had a girlfriend. Like I was just like living my life drinking insane amounts of alcohol. So of course I'm like, this isn't a problem. Like I'm doing okay.
Of course, yeah.
Until the problems, inevitably started. I started to fall back on working out. My grades started slipping. Parents start to, there's situations where parents start to find out about my drinking, and just that progression, it gets worse.
What were some of the low points along that you remember?
So many times my dad had to pick me up from some spot, whether it be like a park or a friend's house or the hospital, if the cops would get me. I've been pulled over multiple times drunk driving. And Not a single time did I get a DUI. And I still to this day don't quite understand the reasoning behind that. But I'll tell you, every single time I got pulled over and I'd be talking to the cops and they'd get me out and we'd talk further, and then they'd see on my license insulin dependent, and then diabetes would somehow get brought into it. And a couple of times
that was your get out.
that was my
Oh.
not even like I was trying to use that.
No.
It was just what happened.
I felt bad for you.
It was just what happened. I remember one time I got pulled over. It blows my mind. Like, I'm arguing with this cop about my driving, and he's telling me like, you were swerving in and out of lanes. So I was like, no, I was not. What are you talking about? Just getting angry at him. And then I got an open Four Loko right next to me in the car. Like that, you're arrested
open
for
container
that
right there.
alone.
Yeah.
Even if you're sober. And like, I'm arguing with this guy. And then another cop shows up, and then an ambulance shows up, and they check my blood sugar because they see that I'm diabetic. It's like 600. And they're like, oh, no, he's got to go to the hospital. Like, we're not booking him. Like, he's got to go to the hospital. And I go to the hospital. My dad picks me up. Don't hear anything about it after that.
Wow.
No charges, nothing. Like, that was the kind of stuff that would happen to me.
What were mom and dad saying at this time? I mean, like when stuff like this was happening, were they?
God bless them. You know, they were petrified. They didn't know how to help me. You know, they've taken things away from me. They've locked me down. They tried everything under the book, but I was a very manipulative and sneaky alcoholic. Really, I didn't know at the time, but I was just living like an alcoholic at 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, up until 21. Like, that's how I lived my life. Those 5 years was as a lying, manipulative, you know, I'm going to do what I have to do to get what I need, you know, type of life. They tried to get me to counselors. They tried to get me into support groups. My dad, God bless him, he was doing all this research on JDRF, you know, Juvenile Diabetes Relief Foundation, an organization that I'm a big part of today. And he got into it right away to get his own support and try to figure out how to help me. And he would always try to get me to go to events and do this and that. And I was just like, once I hit that burnout point, I was so done with diabetes. Like, I gave myself insulin, but I didn't track anything. I didn't care about carb counting. I didn't care about what I was putting in my body. I was just doing the bare minimum of like, I'll check my blood sugar maybe once a day, maybe once every 2 days. And like, I'll give myself insulin, and that's that. This is ridiculous. I'm not doing this.
Denial for sure, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hard denial. And, you know, my parents, they desperately wanted to help me, but they weren't quite sure how to do that. And then the quote rock bottom for me in high school was, it was my senior year. You know, I'm captain of the basketball team. At this point, I went back to playing basketball. I'm captain of the team, and I'm drunk at every practice. And I'm drunk at some of the games too. And I'm playing well. And it's just, it blows my mind. You know, I'll always think about that too, is I wonder what maybe could have been. I maybe could have played like some D2 or some, you know, in college just to enjoy basketball a little bit further. But the drinking, it went from self-medicating to kind of just satisfying this phenomenon of craving that I didn't know about back then. But that's what I was doing. I was drinking to satisfy this unknown obsession and craving. And it just bled into every other part of my life past diabetes. And it took away my passions. It took away my joy. It took away my ability to perform in school, be there for my brothers, my parents. It just was withdrawing me and isolating me from the things that I cared about. And 2 months before I was supposed to graduate, stayed home to go in late to school, told my mom I wasn't feeling good, when really I was just in my room, pounding Fireball the whole morning. Last thing I remember was grabbing my lunchbox off the counter. And I live about 20 minutes from my school. And everything went black, and I come to all the way at school in the parking lot. I had hit some kid's car trying to park my car. The thing I remember too, going right before was I was going, I went to a public school, but it was like one of the strict, nicer public schools in Florida.
Sure.
So they were like the real deal. Like, you cuss, you're getting a suspension, like that kind of school. And there's if you come in late, or parents or anybody comes in, there's a security guard that you got to stop at and check in with. And I blew right past him. So he was like, whoa, what's going on here? And called the school cop and everybody else. And I just remember coming to in the school parking lot, and I'm there behind the wheel crying. And the school nurse is next to me. She was very close with me because I would go and see her every single day. Because, you know, having diabetes, I would go check in with her, give myself insulin. So I was very, very close with her. And she was just like, what the hell is going on here? Like, what is Cole doing drunk behind the wheel of his car at 10 in the morning? So And then my
How did that play out? So you hit a car, they
I hit the
everybody
car.
comes and investigates.
Everybody came out because but you got to remember, I got 2 older brothers that went through the school, very popular. Brandon, my middle brother, was valedictorian. He was 2 years older than me. Brian, my oldest brother, played like 4 different sports, varsity captain, like the Armstrongs were well known, and I was the last one.
Yes.
So the senior, 2 months before the last Armstrong supposed to graduate, this happens. And I was pretty good at hiding it. Only my very, very closest friends and family knew kind of at this point what was going on. But then after that, everybody knew. There was no hiding. There was no double life anymore. It's like, oh, this is Cole. This is Cole Armstrong right here. What you're seeing right now, 10 a.m. drunk driving to school. That's Cole. That's how he lives his life. And I'll never forget being in the back of the ambulance and I see the school nurse crying in tears. I see my basketball coach, who was the dean of students. I see the principal, and I can't remember the 4th person, but they're all just standing in a line right in front of the ambulance looking at me, and they're kind of just their heads down like, what the hell just happened? And that was a very surreal moment. I won't forget.
How did you
that
feel?
one.
What did you feel at that moment? Like, were you crushed?
I was crushed. I was embarrassed. I was confused. A lot of different emotions. And, I remember just being in the hospital, kind of thinking like, what's going to happen? And the school cop was the other guy, because I knew him pretty well too. Another scenario right there where he could have just booked me. He could have just been like, I'll meet you at the hospital, buddy, and you're going to jail for DUI. But they knew me. They all knew me. And they just knew, like, let's not ruin this kid's life. Let's have him get some help. And that's what happened. The school cop, like I think he said verbatim to my dad, Cole's a good kid. This is a very unfortunate situation. I'd like to see him get help rather than go to jail and go that route. Like, just have him get help.
Wow.
And that's what happened. Once I got out of the hospital and I'm sitting at home kind of waiting for what's going to happen.
Sure.
I don't know what's going on. My dad comes in and he's like, hey, listen, so the school has agreed to let you come back and actually finish and graduate there if you go to rehab. That was a lie. That was just to get me to go to rehab. I didn't know at the time, but I was like, okay, I'll go to rehab. And this is, I'm 17. I turn 18 like a couple months later. I don't have any interest in getting sober and bettering my life. I'm 17 years old. I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about getting the things back in my life that I want. So if you're saying I got to go to rehab for that to happen, sure, I'll go to rehab, whatever. And that's what happens. We end up finding this rehab. That's the first time in my life I'm exposed to any sort of recovery, meeting any other kids that, have some issues like me. 12-step program. There was an H&I that was brought in an AA meeting. So it's the first time I'm exposed to that. H&I stands for hospitals and institutions. So it's really like, it's just a 12-step meeting that's brought into a place where essentially people can't leave.
I got it. Okay.
So it's like they can't just go out freewheeling, go to their own meeting. Mm-hmm. It's one that's brought to them. So I'm getting all this exposure, starting to learn these things. And then just really like the humbling lifestyle too of being in rehab and having to make my bed. And we went to the laundromat. So I'm from a upper class family living on the beach in South Florida in a very big house, so never in my life have I been to a laundromat, but like here I am in rehab at a laundromat doing my laundry.
Pretty humbling.
And yeah, it was pretty humbling, man. And I just I remember being with the other kids and, God bless my school and my teachers, because it was the same way. They knew my brothers really well. So they knew me and they wanted to help me. So they helped me by sending like my schoolwork while I was in rehab to do it while I was in rehab. Just like they went above and beyond for me. And it was insane. And I was doing like AP classes and stuff like that, high level schoolwork. And then these kids in the other room, because I went into a separate room to do my stuff, they're doing like 5th grade math. They're doing like, 5th grade English. And my ego is like, I'm way better than these kids. Why am I here? Like, I'm looking at all the differences. Why am I here? I should not be here.
I'm not like these guys.
No, same thing with that AA meeting. I'll never forget it. This guy that came in sharing his story. And when I think back on it now, like he was sharing some really good stuff. He was being very vulnerable and he had a good message. And I just remember looking at him, looking at every other kid around the room and just being like, that's not me. This isn't me. Why am I here? I don't have a problem.
My life's fine. Like I can play basketball. I
had
friends,
to slip up. I made a mistake. Like I can get it figured out and, go back to the way that it was before and just drink normally and smoke weed and all that. Like I legit thought that. So I manipulated my way out of that rehab. But while in that rehab, my parents came and did like a family session with my therapist, and the arguments got heated, and my dad just shut it all down by being like, hey, listen, what are we even talking about right now, dude? Like, you are expelled from Jensen Beach High School. You're not going back there. You're not going to college. Like, you've just royally fucked up everything in your life, and that's that. And I remember I had to excuse myself, and I went to the bathroom, and I fell to the ground crying because the weight and of the gravity of that moment, that realization of what I had actually done hit me, and I couldn't stand physically. I couldn't take it.
He had told you that you were allowed back if you went to rehab.
Yeah.
But
And
then here he's telling you that you were actually expelled.
Yeah. And during my rehab stay.
During your rehab stay. Okay.
Yeah. During my rehab stay, because we were in that family session and things were getting heated. And I was probably saying stuff about like, I just need to get back to school, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, dude, you're not going back to school. Like, that's done. I don't know what you're going to do, but like you've messed up. And I remember like, I couldn't take that. But I still had that mentality of like, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to prove everybody wrong and just do it my way, right? Just that selfish mentality still. And I end up manipulating my way out of that rehab early. Don't know how. Not even like a week after I had gotten out of that rehab and just did what I did at school, and by this point, my parents, they have everything locked up. You know, there's no alcohol that I could have access to. And I go to my ex-girlfriend's house at the time. We lived on the same street down there. And it's just me and her kind of hanging out. And then, you know, I'm telling her I'm about to leave. And she's like, I got to leave right now. You know, you can just let yourself out the back door, like as always. And she leaves. And I just had that click of like, there's alcohol in this house. There's definitely alcohol in this house. And I go searching in my ex-girlfriend's house for her parents' alcohol. I find it. I steal some. I take it home. And I'm in my bathroom with that alcohol that I stole. And I think that's probably the first time that I was like, oh, this is actually kind of fucked up, that what I'm doing right now. But I had this need for it that was so strong that it didn't matter. It didn't matter what I thought I was doing or what might happen if my mom walked in or anything. Like, drinking that alcohol trumped everything else. And that's what I did. And then by the grace of God, I finished through this alternative schooling at home. That, again, diabetes really set that one up. There was some medical thing that allowed for me to do my work at home and somebody to come, you know, help me at home a few days a week and do all my exams from home and stuff like that, just so I could still go to Florida State where I had been accepted at college. Because if they had found out anything, obviously they would have terminated my acceptance. But the way that everything played out, I still got a diploma from that high school that I was expelled from. I mean, just some crazy stuff. And that was actually really cool.
Did your parents pull any strings on that one? Or was that just kind of like,
I don't know.
If
they did, I don't know. But
maybe the high school wanted, either you had, you know, because the family, they knew you guys real well. So either they wanted to help you out and just go, you know what, you're done here anyways. So we're going to give you your diploma and you're just going to move on.
I think that's what happened, to be honest. I don't think my parents had to do anything. The school really cared about us, and we had been, you know, present in their lives for over 4 years. Yeah. So it was kind of like, let's just do this solid for you. And I'll never forget too, like, it was either when I was getting my diploma or another day, but all of my teachers were in a room when I got there. Every teacher that I had that was helping me, you know, and my basketball coach, and then everybody was there. Like, and this is post rehab and everything. So they all think like, oh, Cole's out of rehab, Cole's sober, he's trying to do better now. I'm still drinking and smoking weed at this point, but they don't know that. And I got to give them and I meant it too, like a really heartfelt, like, thank you. And I started crying, and you know, they received it really well, of like, we just want you to do well, Cole, because we know that you can. And that was a cool moment. It was a cool emotional moment. Unfortunately, I wasn't sober but like, I felt the power of that moment. These people that were willing to do that for me was really cool.
They shared what was on their hearts too. I mean, I think that's what connects people, is like having an emotional connection, you know, and they were sharing like very authentically, like, Cole, we just want the best for you.
And I felt that. I really did. That kind of led to me getting to go to college that next fall after a weird summer of just like kind of uncertainty with what college is going to look like and trying to live a normal life. But the drinking at this point is just really starting to consume me. And then just, you know, diabetes is there. It's kind of just an afterthought at this point. I manage it
So what's
I do what
happening
I
with
can.
your happening
I
with
actually
your
get a pump. So this is right
Oh,
before I go
okay.
to college. I turn 18, don't have the pediatric endocrinologist anymore, who we ended up like she sucked, man. She was the worst. And like she was still prescribing Humulin, which is like this really old basal insulin that kind of it gives you, you know, a little bit of insulin throughout the day. But it's just super ineffective. And pretty much everybody that I had talked to, if I told them I was on Humulin, they would be like, why? Why are you on Humulin? And I had a handful of people be like, why didn't you get a pump right away? And apparently there's some rules behind like you need to do injections first. But I hope that's changed by now because honestly, you should be taught how to use a pump and start pump therapy right away.
So
because
talk about what a pump
that
is.
changed my life. So I use a Medtronic insulin pump and you put a reservoir in it, you connect a site to your body, and then you program it. You have to program it a certain way to give you a small, it's all fast acting insulin too. What I use, and I think most pump therapies are all fast acting insulin. But you program it to kind of drip feed you small amounts of insulin throughout the day, kind of like your pancreas would. And then you can do a bolus, which is when you give yourself insulin before eating food or something like that. You can program
larger quantity.
It goes by carbs. So that's why having a general idea of the carbs you're eating is good when you use a pump, because it's very easy to give yourself the wrong amount of insulin. And it's a very dangerous thing to have if you don't know how to use it, which is why it's a process to go through. You know, it's like a class. Like I did like a week-long class the summer before I went to school to learn how to use it. I had to make sure that everything was good. And then I just remember immediate results. Like I immediately was able to control my diabetes a lot better by using a pump, which is why I'm so big on it. I didn't have a CGM at this point, which is a continuous glucose monitor, something that checks your blood sugar every 5 minutes, which is great. I use that now. That's changed my life too. But just the pump alone, I found in my experience, I know everybody's different, but it gave me a lot better control and confidence over my diabetes. So that was cool to have that going into college, because that was such a big change for me too, in a good way and a bad way, because now I've got all this freedom on my hands and it's really up to me. And when it's up to me, it does not go good. It does not go good. And my parents, very, very wise in not letting me bring my car the first year to college because of my drinking and driving. So they were like, "No, you're not gonna bring your car. Just get rides."
They knew you were drinking at this point still, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So you get back from
not to the extent that I was, but they I think they knew I was back at it. Yeah. So that's where they're like, we don't know how to help them. We don't know what to do, this and that. And my college life, I went to Florida State. So it's in Tallahassee. It's not like out here. Arizona State is in such a good place out here. It's around so many other cities and things. There's so much to do outside of Arizona State University. There's nothing to do outside of Florida State University. It is in Tallahassee, Florida on the Panhandle, and there's nothing around it. It's the capital of Florida, so there's a bunch of the Capitol buildings and stuff, but there's no town, there's really nothing, man. It's the Florida State campus. That's it. So if you're not actively involved in stuff on campus, you're not doing much of anything. And I didn't get involved in anything because I was too scared. I was too withdrawn. I was too afraid to make friends. Like I wanted to be outgoing, but I couldn't because I'm reserved by nature. But then also alcohol literally just pulled me away from my ability to do that and to look people in the eye and to, trust in myself.
Did it even give you a little bit of confidence?
Alcohol?
Did it ever give you confidence,
yes.
Or did it always kind of take it away?
It did. And honestly, that was the only way. If I was in school or like at college at Florida State, like I had to be drunk to like attempt to make a friend or talk to somebody. Like I felt like I had to. It loosened me up and made me feel good enough to even have that conversation.
You probably were ashamed of yourself.
Yeah, very much. A lot of guilt, a lot of shame, just constantly with me. So that was most of my college life was drinking alone in my dorm and just like hanging out with the few friends that I had already had from like back home that were there, playing video games, and then just like trying to go to the gym and trying to keep up with my grades. That like it was just a constant struggle and a constant of like me trying to escape and not do anything. Like I just wanted no responsibilities. I couldn't handle anything over what I had going on with me and let alone diabetes, like just taking a back seat to everything.
How'd you
Yeah,
make it with school?
I didn't. Well, my first semester, I did actually. I got A's and B's somehow. Don't know how. And I'll
Wow.
never forget being home for Christmas after that first semester, getting A's and B's. And we were at the dinner table, and my dad said something along the lines of like, we weren't sure you were going to make it. Like, and then like he said something like that, and then realized like, oh man, I just said that to my son. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. And he started like almost crying. And this was like, my dad doesn't show a lot of emotion. So I knew that it meant something to him to see that like I'm actually trying to give an effort. And like I don't know if I was like offended by that, or if I think I just laughed it off and was like, it's okay, like I get it. Because he had every right to think that I shouldn't have made it even that first semester. But then after that, pretty much went downhill from there. Grades just kept slowly declining. My drinking just slowly kept getting worse. And then, the major outbursts really start happening. A lot more drunk driving incidents.
After this is so the year 2, year 3, stuff like
Yeah.
that.
And then because after my freshman year, sophomore, and junior year, I lived in a house with some actually really good childhood friends that were at Florida State too. So they looked after me, but they're starting to get an idea pretty quickly of my drinking. I'll never forget one of my roommates went into my room in my closet, and like on the top I would stash all of my empty vodka bottles, and there were so many up there. He was just like, what the hell? Like, dude, you've been drinking all those? It was like 2 months into the semester. He was like, you've drank all of those? I was like, yeah, it's not hard, like that's what I do. I just drink alcohol. And like that was my life at that point. It was just a constant steady state of being drunk. And like what came with that was just a very, very poor quality of existence and a lot of misery, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, and now health consequences. At 19, 20 years old, I'm starting to actually see some health consequences from the drinking. And like you said earlier, did you know what you were doing? No, I had no idea. But now I'm actually starting to catch some wind of it. And I think constantly throwing up bile that turned into blood was something. I started to notice that. And I guess it was just the action of doing it so much that made it bleed was what was my medical opinion. But I never talked to anybody about it, so I don't know what it could have been. But I couldn't stop drinking. It started to get to a point where I wanted to entertain it because it was starting to in the book of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, there's a part that says it ceased to be a luxury and became a necessity. And that's really what it was. It was not a luxury. It wasn't something I did to have fun anymore. It was necessary that I drank to, like I said earlier, be okay and function. And that it was just a constant mode of survival. And I end up a couple of stints in rehab throughout college. One was an outpatient program that I smoked weed throughout the entire time. They didn't drug test, so can't really count that. And my coin out on after like the 5th week or whatever, I was absolutely hammered because you're supposed to give like a presentation or like, just a little talk, a little speech. And like I was maybe with like 10 other people, but the thought of talking in front of anybody, I would get like heart palpitations. I would shake so bad I couldn't speak. Like public speaking in that realm, in that point in my life was just unimaginable. Any presentation I had in a class or anything like that, I was drunk for every single one, because like there was no way I could get up and talk in front of people just as me.
Mm-hmm.
Could not fathom that. So do that outpatient program. And then I somehow get a girlfriend one time I'm home. I think before I go into my junior year of college, I get a girlfriend from my hometown. And then I go back to school, and that was just such an unhealthy relationship because we met through drinking, and then she really figured out like, oh, this kid's like an alcoholic. This is crazy. And just like all of the relationship problems that come along with that. There's no need to get into that relationship. But what happened with that relationship led me to go to rehab a second time on my, quote, own accord. But really it was to repair and get that relationship back because she left me. And I went to this rehab down in Florida, and it was, it was a good rehab, but like it was very unethical. Now that I work in the space professionally, when I think back to like when I was a client there, it's a super unethical place. That aside, there was no meaningful connections that were made there with any of the staff. My therapist I saw maybe twice. No real 12-step exposure. So it was really just a physical separation from the drink. And I stayed sober 6 weeks. Not even a week after I got out of that rehab, I relapsed again. And then at this point, I'm going into my senior year at Florida State, and I get my own studio apartment. And this was like the beginning of the end, because my drinking is at such a violent and aggressive point. Like, I'm getting aggressive. I'm getting like very, very angry. And when I get drunk now, because it's my only outlet, I didn't have any way to release, this pent up frustration and guilt and just depression and anxiety. And I'm taking SSRIs at this point. I'm seeing a psychiatrist, but I'm lying to them about my drinking. I'm lying to everybody about my drinking, my endocrinologist, everybody. So they're giving me, like Zoloft and all this stuff, and I'm taking it and I'm drinking, and man, like the chemical reactions that my brain must have been going through really fucked me up, because I was not okay. I think I'm lucky that I didn't grow up with guns, and I never ever thought to get a gun, because there were some times when I was very drunk in my studio apartment that had I had a gun, I don't know, I might have done it. I might have done it, because I didn't have a filter at some point. That would have been the easiest way, because there was no other way that I could have done it that didn't require a lot more effort.
Mm-hmm.
It's not hard to
Suicide,
it's not hard to pull the trigger.
No.
And I remember too, like, I lived on the 4th floor of that studio apartment, and every time I'd walk by, because it was like kind of an outdoor hallway, like when you would get out of the apartment, like those outdoor kind of setups, the pool in the middle and stuff like that. Yeah, a little walkway. Every time I walked by those rails, I had this overwhelming urge to just jump. Like this voice in my head saying, just jump every time. And I'd be full of fear, because it's like, I don't want to die, but like, it's like my body and my mind is willing me to, like, dude, just kill yourself. So like, that's where I lived those last few months.
Wow.
Was just full of...
Sounds like hell.
It was hell. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I finally got to a point where enough was enough, and I was either like for real gonna do it, or I was gonna surrender and get help. I'm pretty much failing out at this point. I can't make it to class. I'm not participating in anything. I'm barely hanging out with my friends at this point. I'm just locked in that studio apartment days on end. Type 1 diabetic, not really eating much food. Just my diet's strictly alcohol at this point. I'm going through the binge cycle of throwing up for 24 hours, staying sober for a couple of days to let my body physically recuperate. And then I'm just right back to the liquor store to get another bottle, do it all over again. I woke up one day, I'm experimenting with some other drugs at this point, like LSD and shrooms and stuff. Like on a Tuesday, I'm taking LSD, like doing just some weird stuff, and a lot of Xanax too at this point. I'm taking a lot of Xanax at this point with my drinking.
Oh, wow. So that's quite the combination.
Quite a combo. And I woke up one day from a really bad blackout. At this point, I was already contemplating, like, do I finish the semester, or do I get help now? Do I kill myself now? Like those kind of debates.
Wow.
And I woke up from that blackout in a pool of blood in my bed, like a lot, like an insane amount of blood. And, I kind of look up, I'm all fucked up, bruised up, cut, scraped. I look at footprints of blood across the floor. There's blood smeared on the wall.
What?
Yeah. And like, I'm all messed up. So I'm instantly thinking, like, what happened? Like, did I try to kill myself last night? Did somebody come in here? Did I try to kill somebody? Like, I couldn't remember anything.
No joke.
So I'm freaking out. I'm like, what happened? Like, what is going on? And then like, I frantically started trying to clean up, and I'll never forget, like, looking at myself in the mirror, holding my cleaning supplies, the way that I looked, just the state of my apartment. And it just, like a tidal wave, hit me. Of every moment somebody had ever like talked to me about my drinking, how I was living my life, how it was affecting them, why it was bad, it hit me. And I heard it. I felt it for the first time. I just put everything down that I had, and I hit my knees. And, like I was raised, in a Christian household, but nothing like really forced on you. Like prayer was there and stuff, but it wasn't anything crazy. But like, I remember hitting my knees, and I had some exposure at rehab and stuff to AA at this point too. And at this point, to like prior to that little episode, I tried AA in Tallahassee, tried to find some young people's group. There was just so many older people there. It's not like Phoenix out here where there's just a bunch of young people. It was a lot of So it was hard for me to really relate, but I also didn't try enough. I didn't really work the 12 steps. I just showed up to meetings drunk all the time. And the other alcoholics in there would be like, I'm grateful to be sober today because I'm not that kid over there drunk and crying in the meeting right now. That happened to me so many times, and I'd be so upset hearing that. But they're right. Like, they're right. After that blackout, when I wake up and I hit my knees, I say, God help me. That's all I said. I just said, God help me. I can't do this anymore.
Surrendered.
Yeah, I gave up. I couldn't do it. Actually, but prior to hitting my knees, I saw myself in the mirror. And when I had that moment of realization, I was like, I'm going to die in this apartment by myself. At some point, I'm not going to wake up like I just did. And that's okay. And I sat with that for maybe about as long as we just did in that silent moment. And then I was like, no, that's not okay. And I hit my knees and I asked for help because I didn't want to die in that apartment. I did not. I make calls. I talk to my family. My mom's doing all this research, trying to figure out, like, where's the best place for me to go. She's looking at all these places in California. She likes Dr. Phil, so she's looking into like Dr. Phil's rehab. They do a bunch of stuff on the brain, this and that. I'm like, that's okay. Well, I'm not going to rule that out, but I'm still looking too. I hit up all my buddies that I was in the rehab in Florida with. The only one who got back to me, like, I let him like, hey, I'm not doing well. I need to get help again. I want to go somewhere different. If you guys know of any places. The only one who got back to me was this kid, Chelsea, who's actually from out here.
Oh, really?
Who went to Florida for treatment. And guess who his sponsor was? Marcus.
Whoa. Marcus Clark, who's been on the podcast. Yep. Oh, man.
Was his sponsor, and he gave me Marcus's number. He was like, this guy just opened up a treatment center. Like, you should call him. I've heard it's really good. That's all I needed to hear. I called Marcus. I chopped it up with Marcus for not even anything but a few minutes. And I just, like, something about it was like, this seems interesting. And then I talked to another dude who worked there in admissions for, quite some time too. And it was really just like a bro to bro conversation. It wasn't anything.
What year was this?
Professional. It was like 2018.
2018,
like, it really wasn't a professional conversation. It was just like a dude having a conversation with another dude. And that's why I liked it, because It was just like, I can get down with this. This feels like the place I want to go. And Cornerstone, man, there was like, you couldn't find anything about them online because they were still so new. I had to scroll to like the 4th page on Google to find their website. And I finally found it, and I'm looking at it, and I'm just like, yeah, I think this is where I want to go. And I'm talking to my dad, and I withdraw from school for medical reasons. I go home, and not even like 2 days after I had called Marcus and them and talked to him, am I getting on a plane to go to Phoenix? And I'll never forget my dad telling me like, why do you want to go to this place? Is it because they go to the gym, this and that? Like, partly, yeah. It's like, I talked to them about, they go to the gym, they just do things that seem like I can jive with. Mm-hmm. And he was just like, okay, I just don't want you to go to a place for the wrong reasons, because it's like, you got to take it serious. And I was like, no, I hear that. That makes sense. That was it, man. Like, I got on a plane by myself to go to Phoenix, and I'll never forget, my mom dropped me off at the airport, and she was like, go find yourself,
Ooh,
and
man, that's deep.
Yeah, that it was deep. And like, it's just funny too, because like, I just cold turkey stopped alcohol and kind of like smoked weed through my detox. Horrible idea. Don't do that. Like, I could have died from a seizure or something with the amount that I was drinking, but I was so ready to make a change that, I just didn't drink. Like, on that flight out, I could have got hammered, but I didn't drink because I knew like what would happen if I did, and I didn't want to mess anything up.
It actually mattered to you now. Like, you had something that mattered to you. Like, I know you, and when you have your mindset on something, like, you're going to do it, and you had never made up your mind up until this point that you were going to be done. Yeah.
This was the first time in my life that I was the one saying, no, I'm not, I can't do this anymore. I got to make a change.
2018 was a time I met the team over at Cornerstone. Yeah. So you were that was when I was introduced to them. I had started my own practice.
I might have been a client there.
You may have been a client there.
Yeah.
It's interesting that we bring that up, because I was like, I remember I still kind of laugh because I went in to see them, and I was just meeting them. A friend of both Estel's and mine introduced us and said, hey, you should go meet this guy. He's got a rehab and recovery center in Scottsdale Air Park. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I call him up, and I'm just meeting people. Like, it's just fun. I was like, dude, and I meet them, and I'm like, man, these are some good dudes.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, come into the back room over here. So then we go and sit in this back room, and literally they pull up like 8 chairs, and like Braden Younghusband and Marcus Clark and Estel and Sod and
probably Karen.
Karen wasn't there in that room then. myself, and he's like, so Estel's first thing is like, so you planning to be medical director? Like that was he didn't know me,
okay.
but he thought I was coming for a job application. I was like, no, I just want to meet you guys.
That's before my time then. Yeah.
I think they had one, but they were kind of like looking around a little bit or something. He was just kind of curious, like, well, why are you coming here? And I was like, because like,
you guys
are amazing. Like I've heard some things. I want to meet you. And so you were there around that time. What was it that really resonated with you? So you're in, other treatments hadn't worked out. And obviously you hadn't had your mind made up about it, but this is different. You're showing up out of your own will, desiring to go.
Yep.
What was different about Cornerstone's experience?
It had to have been, honestly, the state of where Cornerstone was at the time. I'm so grateful that I came when Cornerstone was what it is. I work there now. We have the same program pretty much. It's just on a much larger scale. Back then, it was that one small office park, like office suite, just that and one house, all men. And there was maybe like 6 other clients there, like 7 of us. So it was intimate. It was small. That I liked. The first thing that I did, Saad, is the one who picked me up from the airport. And he took me to the gym. I'm shaking. I'm detoxing. Definitely not the play. Don't do that. But that's just how they rolled back then. It was kind of like they had just started, and it was, let's get you with the guys right away. And the time I got in just so happened to be gym time. So he was like, let's go meet him at the gym. And I was like, cool. I love working out. And I mustered the courage to do a workout, and it was hilarious. But like, I just instantly felt a connection with these guys. Like Saad, when he picked me up and we drove to the gym together and we're having these conversations. Like Saad's one of my closest people today, man. Like that's a mentor to me. That's a guy I look up to. That's a guy that, has things in life that I want. And, I aspire to be like him. He's a good man, and he's a great, husband, father. And it's those are the people that work at Cornerstone. That's the culture.
Yes.
And I saw that like immediately when I got out here. So I was like, okay. And then we went immediately to a 12-step meeting that night. I got a sponsor right away. So like these are things that just didn't happen at other places I went to that, were catalysts in like helping me build a foundation. That was their thing. Is like, we're going to help you build a foundation because you don't have one. Mm-hmm. And they do that through lifestyle. They do that through building community. I had a different therapist my first time. I've been through Cornerstone twice, but like that first time, I was doing work with my therapist. I was working with a sponsor. I'm getting up early in the morning. I'm making my bed. I'm learning how to cook food. I'm, laundry, chores. I'm doing these things that like I never really did before, but the intention behind them was different this time. I'm not just doing them to do them. I'm doing them to learn how to apply that to my life. And when you shift your perspective on that changes everything. That changes everything, because if you can't open your mind to changing behaviors and like building habits, you're not going to stay sober. I don't think I couldn't. I couldn't, because if I'm physically sober, but I'm still doing the same behaviors and lifestyle that I was when I was drinking, I'm probably going to end up drinking again because I'm in the same scenarios,
That's
doing
right.
the same things. So Cornerstone tried to shift that for me. And, working the steps, man, they told me I'd have a spiritual experience, and I did. I had a true spiritual experience. I was at the Salvation Army with my old sponsor, and you have to have like 2 years to speak there. It's like a 6-month program too. It's a free 6-month program for men, Salvation Army. So like some of these dudes in there have like 4 or 5, almost 6 months sober. And I'm newly sober, probably like 6 weeks sober. And I'm sitting up at the front with my sponsor, and he's talking. And I guess it was like a panel meeting, which means like multiple speakers go. One guy didn't show up. So they had me speak. They had me say some words. I didn't know what to say. I didn't feel qualified to be up there. Technically, I wasn't by their standards, but here I am sitting up in front of like 50, 60 dudes, trying to speak, finding myself able to speak.
Interesting.
Couldn't do that before.
No.
So like,
that's new.
That fear of what other people thought of me was still there, but not enough to deter me from doing something like that, because I just had this newfound like trust and faith in myself and love for myself, self-worth, self-love. Cornerstone's big on that. And they told me like, we'll love you till you love yourself. And that's exactly what happened there, because like I learned to love myself again. And I remember talking to up there, and I'm saying things, I'm talking about gratitude or something. And I remember saying like, I'm great. And I'm grateful too that I haven't thought once about drinking today. And as I said that, I realized that Like, holy shit, I haven't thought about drinking today. And then like this wave hit me of like, this warm, fuzzy feeling of like, I think I'm gonna be all right. Like, I think I'm gonna
It's gonna
be
be
okay.
okay. Yeah. Think about that saying. I just got like a little bit emotional when you said that. Like, we'll love you till you love yourself. Just to have people in your life who are like, willing to love you and be there for you when you're not even willing to be there for yourself. Even talks about it in scripture, right? It's like, the greater love hath no man than to lay down his life for his friends, And that's what love is, man. It's being there for dudes and for people who aren't willing to be there for themselves even.
Yeah. That's what Cornerstone does, and God bless him for it, because it brought me from the deep depths of alcoholism and addiction, let alone like my diabetes and everything else too. But just like my thought process, the way I viewed the world, how I treated other people, all of those things changed drastically in a short amount of time. And it was an awesome experience. And they recommended that I stay out here rather than go back to Florida, because that was my plan, go back to school, do all that. But I learned that it's important to continue to work on that foundation that you build, not just leave it. So that's what I did. I went to sober living. I did their outpatient. I stayed out here a little longer. And then, I learned that in sobriety, you can still do what you want to do, how you want to do it. That's kind of what I did. Slowly but surely, I started to, they call it taking your will back, but I just started making decisions based off of what I wanted to do without discussing it with people, without really understanding the magnitude of a decision that I was making, like choosing to leave sober living at 4 months sober, getting it in my own place, not even with roommates, my own spot. And, I'm working like a part-time job. I have an internship with Estel's brother-in-law at this marketing agency. It was awesome. Such a great opportunity that I got to do with that. And I'm signed up for classes to go back to school. And I'm trying to work a 12-step program. So like I took on more than I could handle. And then I got out of the safe and countable environment, and I slowly dropped the 12-step program because I had these other things that I needed to work on. So my priorities are all over the place. And then that obsession to drink just came back. It just came back so quick. And I was out of tune of like my spiritual connection and my people. So I'm not talking about these thoughts of drinking again. And then as soon as I get in that apartment, my mom comes out to help me move in and everything. Not even like a week after I moved in that apartment, I got drunk. And same situation, just a different state.
How long did it last this time?
A few days.
Okay.
Yeah, very quick. I woke up.
Yeah.
Yep, I woke up. I relapsed. Next day, I invite my sponsor to come over to go in the pool and stuff. Like we had already had that set up. So like, I think I was just deep down kind of like just wanting to get caught. Because he found out right away. Of course, he came over and he just knew I was drunk, and he was, he called over Braden.
Young husband,
the Cornerstone.
Yeah.
And they tried to get me some help right then and there. And I don't remember a whole lot of it because I was pretty drunk by this point, but I tried to like fight Braden. I was very combatant, very aggressive. Like I said, aggressive and violent towards the end of my drinking. And, 4 months sober, that didn't really matter with the progression of my drinking and my disease. Like I just picked up right where I left off. And like I woke up from a blackout on the floor of the bathroom of that Tempe apartment.
Of the new apartment. Yeah.
Same feelings.
Same shit, new place.
Just that quick, right back. And I just remember being like, man, how the fuck did I get here again? Because now I have a mind of a better life that I know is there. Like that feeling that I had at Salvation Army, that was real. But you can also, then I learned you can lose that too. You can also go back. So it's a maintenance. You have to do this shit. You have to do this shit. And that's what really clicked with me. And I drank for a day or two more. And then my old sponsor called me. He was like, you want to go to our home group meeting? And for whatever reason, I'm in bed drunk at a Tuesday night. And I was just like, yeah, I do. And he told me too, the day after I relapsed, he was like, well, you know what you probably got to do? I was like, what? You got to call your parents and let them know what happened.
Ooh, man.
That was hard.
That's hard.
That was hard to tell them. And this was like a couple of weeks before I was supposed to fly back to Florida to go see my entire family for like a
celebratory event, right?
Yeah. And it was like for our family company that we get together like, annually to just be together. They talk about business stuff, but it's really just for the family to all be together. And that trip was coming up and I was supposed to be sober and going to it. obviously that did not happen after this relapse. And I'll just never forget having to tell my mom what happened and my dad too. And, my mom just being like supportive and my dad's supportive too. But at this point, it's like, okay, I'm living in an apartment they pay for. I'm driving a car they pay for. I'm using a phone they pay for. They pay for everything. And then after this time, I didn't realize it was going to happen, but they cut me off from everything.
Whoa.
Who told them to do that? Cornerstone Healing Center.
Unbelievable.
That probably saved my life. That probably saved my life because I realized like this apartment is going to go. I'm not going to have a car to drive. I'm not going to be able to use a phone. How the fuck am I going to get insulin? Like I had thought about ways of like, I could probably manipulate them into no, it was done. They had boundaries now. They had knowledge. They knew how to help me now. And it was to not help me continue to do the things that I was doing. So I was like, shit, I gotta do something. But I went to that home group meeting and, I immediately after that just went to detox because I don't know if I physically needed it, but I just wanted to go somewhere where I knew I'd be okay for a few days and wouldn't drink. Went to a Scottsdale detox and had a private room, could use my phone, very luxurious, bougie little detox place, but it was safe and it was where I needed to be. And I could use my phone. So I was talking to my parents, I was talking to people. And then Estel comes and sees me. Estel pops in for a visit. Estel Wallace, the CEO of Cornerstone.
We both have such a fondness and love for that guy, man. Yeah. He's like a big teddy bear.
He's a great guy, man. And I'll never forget when he came and saw me when I was in detox and just had a very, very straightforward conversation with me about what was going to happen if I didn't get sober. And that was pretty much that I'm going to die. He used to have this thought when I came through because I was a quote, as I always was in rehab, a star client who did what he needed to do and was very good attitude and stuff, all surface level though, because I need you to like me. I need approval. I need validation. So I would always put on that show. And he was like, yeah, man, like I'm thinking, Cole, man, this is a solid dude. He's going to sponsor half of Phoenix. He's going to, he's got a great life ahead of him. And then after he heard about what happened, like talking to me in that moment, he's like, and then I heard what happened. And I thought, man, Cole's going to die. Cole's going to die. And I just, that hit me so hard. I was just sitting in that detox chair like, damn, everything is becoming more and more real as I go through these life changes of like seeing what life could be like this way and that way, as in like being sober or drinking. And now I'm at this point now, I don't want to drink, but I know that I don't really have a choice. I'm an alcoholic. And unless I put a solution in place, I'm going to drink again. I know that even to this day right now. Like if I stop doing the things I'm doing, eventually I'm going to pick up a drink because it's what I need to do.
Fills a void.
Yeah, it's what I need to do. And it's like alcohol is my problem, but it's also my solution. But so when something is both the problem and the solution, like that's a mind fuck, right? Because it's like, it's the problem because of what happens to me, but it's the solution because of how it really makes me feel and help to deal with my problems. So like that, how do you get out of that? You have to arrest the drinking completely and then you have to put a new solution in place because the problem will then go away, but then the solution's not there. So Cornerstone gave me that new solution. And basically that's what Estel was saying was like, you got to do something to get back in the solution, bro. Or like, this isn't going to end well for you. And little did I know that they had been plotting and scheming with my parents the entire time to like, all right, this is what he's going to want to do. Don't let him do it. Because exactly is what happened what I wanted to do when I got out.
Yep.
I was like, I'll just go live back at that apartment. I'm going to get back into AA. I'm going to get back into meetings. I'll do IOP at Cornerstone, and I'll get back into it, but I'll still live in my apartment because I wasn't willing to give that up. And they were like, no, we're not paying for that apartment anymore, dude. Like you're costing us thousands of dollars. We're going to break that lease. We're not doing this anymore, dude. It's either listen to Cornerstone, do what they tell you to do, or don't call us. I was like, holy shit, who are you people? Like, where did you guys, what happened? And that was it. And I very reluctantly drove right from detox to Cornerstone, still under the impression that I'm going to go back to that apartment. But for whatever reason, man, I had this ability to be honest when I was talking to my therapist. And she was asking me these questions. And
who's your therapist then?
Then it was this lady named Cassandra, and she was like an intern therapist at the time.
Okay.
She didn't work there after a whole, like not much longer.
Yeah.
When I went back the second time, and then I had Karen. And that's what changed it for me. But like, I was talking to this lady and she's asking me questions and she's, just at like on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to drink tonight when you go back home? And I told her, I was like, probably like a 7. It was really like a 10, but I dialed it back just a little bit to like give her a decent answer. And she was like, Cole, how am I supposed to let you leave here knowing there's a 70% chance you're going to drink tonight? Like, you need to go to the house with the guys. You need to stay there over the weekend, like at least, and then come in on Monday and we'll talk about a plan for you. And I was just like, dude, all right, whatever. And probably one of the most humbling and humiliating moments of my life was walking back into that sober living house.
Oh, yes.
And my sponsee, so I was sponsoring a dude in Cornerstone, and then I relapsed and went to Cornerstone. And that sponsee now has more time sober than me, now sees that his sponsor like relapse and all that.
Humbling for him too.
Oh yeah, no, he told me, I'm just selfishly, I'm like, oh, it's humiliating. But he was all fucked up about me relapsing because like I'm the guy he was looking for guidance for.
Yes.
And then that happened.
Also shows him that there's no pedestal you can build with time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like
time doesn't mean anything.
That's the thing that I've really started. I would want people to understand that too, is that each day is its own day. And when you get someone in a room who says, oh, I've been 25 years or whatever else, it's like, don't let the time that you've been sober, don't let it go to your head.
No. Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Time really, it doesn't mean anything. And that's something that I learned my second time through Cornerstone after having my own experience. And yeah, that second time at Cornerstone, I was definitely not the same client I was the first time. I was bitter. I was angry. I was, I didn't want to be there every day, and I let it be known. But I fucking stayed. I didn't leave. No matter how bad I wanted to leave, I didn't leave. And a part of it was because I knew that if I left, I didn't have anything to go to.
You talked about earlier how you were always just like nice and you were kind and you just went through the program and you did exactly what they asked and whatever. And this time you were changed because you were just being authentic, and like Estel had kind of called you out on your behavior.
Yep. And Karen told me to be authentic.
Ooh.
Karen. So now Karen, who is now the clinical director at Cornerstone, back then was still just a primary therapist. And she took me on because she's like, all right, this kid's back again. Like, let me take him. And she fucked me up. Those therapy sessions with Karen, that's probably some of the best therapy I've ever done in my life. We did a really powerful they call it psychodrama, where I was in the middle of the room and all the other clients that were in treatment were given phrases to say about me. So whether it was my diabetes saying something, or my drinking, or my parents, or, like a girlfriend, or just a bunch of things in my life that could like get at me. I can't remember the exact, like the exercise was to let it out and like address and confront everything. And that's what I did. And that was one of the, like, to this day, one of the most impactful exercises I've ever done, because like they were all like the same way my head says all those things to me. I was actually hearing it from voices on the outside coming at me, all these things. And I just screamed, man, like loud, vicious, screamed so loud. Marcus had to come in from wherever he was to be like, what just happened? What's going on? And Karen was just like, get out. Because like I was going off, and I confronted every single voice and said what I needed to say. And I proceeded the 45 minutes of that remaining group. I went outside and I cried my eyes out. And just like everybody, all the other clients were around me and were like there for me. And Karen was like there for me and like kind of just coached me of like, what's going through your head right now? How do you feel? That's priceless. A moment like that, an experience like that. I hope everybody that goes through treatment has a day like that, man, because it gave me the ability to, because following that, I was okay with the idea of being there. I wasn't as angry and bitter anymore. I was like, this is where I need to be right now. Like, this is where I need to be. And
you faced all your demons.
Yeah. Marcus too. I was in Braden's office with him or something like that. And Nate McCamey, a good friend of mine who also used to work there. And I was saying something about diabetes, blah, blah. And they all just in unison were like, bro, you need to shut up about that. Like, stop with the poor me, self-pity, diabetes. Like, what are you going to do about it? Because this victim mentality, you're going to continue to drink your life, just hitting me with it. And I'm just like, whoa. Usually people are like, oh, I'm so sorry, Cole. But they were just like, no, get your head out of your ass, man. Like, it's time to take leadership, ownership. Like, and they were just like giving me all this fire. And I was just like, yeah, you're right. Yeah. And I started feeding into it. And like from that day on too, I had a different viewpoint around self-pity, especially because like, dude, what's with this poor, like telling myself, like, what's with this poor me attitude, man? Like, come on, we've had this for long enough now. We have a working knowledge of it. We're a strong, and that's where like the positive affirmations, these things that I'm doing at Cornerstone, learning to love myself, all of that starts to play in how I deal with my chronic illness, my disease.
Aren't we all diseased? It's so interesting when people come in with something and they're so identified with it, right? Which is what a lot of people have. And it's just because where they've come from, I understand that that's the identity that they've kind of been labeled with. It's interesting how like we all have some disease, if you will. I don't even want to say it like that. It's like we all have our dysfunctions and the things that are wrong or whatever else. But when I think about the identity piece, if you can get someone to de-identify and just say, this is something that I'm dealing with, this isn't who I am, it's a different game changer too. Like that's so subtle of a twist of like, this is who I am versus this is something that I'm dealing with. Like
same with emotions. And I'm actually doing some work around that too. Right now is not like I feel angry. I'm not anger. I am angry. I'm not. It's something I feel. It's not, I don't have to like hold on and identify with that emotion because I think there's some power in that. If you say like, I am angry, like I feel like I'm going to be angry for a longer amount of time.
Yes.
Whereas like, I feel angry right now and that's, this too will pass. This is, so just
shall pass.
Little things like that, that foundationally I really did learn at Cornerstone. That second time that I went through was a very different experience, and I got a new sponsor who I still have today. His name's Elijah. Fucking phenomenal dude, man. He's been through every step of the way with me. Has been a very good spiritual guide for me. Somebody that I can rely on, and has helped me to not make some poor decisions over the years. I got out of Cornerstone and I went to sober living again, but this time I just didn't have an expectation around anything. And I just followed direction because I knew what would happen if I didn't. And enough time passed where, slowly but surely my life just kind of began to morph into what it is now that I didn't even know was possible, man. Like I went from this get well job at Dillard's to then Cornerstone asking me to work there, which was an awesome opportunity. I started off as a house manager. As they were expanding, like right when I got there, they started to expand. They got the second house. And then I went from house manager to kind of like a support staff position, did a bunch of different things with that. It was kind of just a filler position to do a bunch of different things. And then this awesome opportunity to work in admissions came up. And I had found purpose at Cornerstone when I got sober and in the 12-step community, like helping other alcoholics, being of service, like that gave me a sense of purpose. And then really I felt that working in admissions would be another, really its highest form of purpose at Cornerstone for me, because I get to help people get into the program that saved my life.
Totally.
This is the place that's going to fucking do it. Our routine, our schedule, it's based off of how Estel and Marcus and those dudes got sober and now how I got sober. So like, dude, if I can do it, if they can do it, anybody can do it. And like, this is an ethically sound, genuine place that wants to help people, So I thought if I get to be the first contact for people when making those calls to rehab, because I know what that's like, that's overwhelming. That's a lot. I would love to do that. And so that's what I did, man. And it was a grind back then because I didn't really have a whole lot of responsibilities. I was a single 22 or 23-year-old man who was just newly sober, had all the time in the world to really grind away at a new job that required a lot of my time. And I got a lot of good experience in those early days because it was really just the company was going through some changes personnel wise. So it was just me and Saad for a little bit there. And then a couple other people that were brought on for business development that pitched in to help with admissions. But I was like the one admissions specialist and Saad was the director. So there were a lot of long days. But man, it gave me really good experience, and I learned a lot from those opportunities, and it kind of just morphed into where we're at now in this much bigger, nicer facility, expanding on the horizon of opening another facility, and just doing some insanely great things that I didn't really think that I'd ever get to be a part of anywhere at any company in any capacity. I went from. You just talk about an experience. I went from being a client to now helping run their admissions department. Every step of the way that helped me get there was the things that I learned at Cornerstone in the 12-step community. And today I'm at a point in my life where I'm married. So I met my wife out here at a CrossFit gym when I decided to start doing CrossFit. We got together and I just knew there was something about her, man, that was going to keep me around with her for the long haul. Because when I met her, she had a boyfriend and was like, sorry. Like I asked her out, and she's like, sorry. Yeah, like I'm seeing this guy. And I was like, damn, that sucks. And I remember telling Saad, like, I think I'm gonna wait for this girl. I don't know why, but like, I'm not trying to actively really look for anybody. And she's got my interest. And then not even a month later, I'd kind of forgotten about her because I was so busy. And she hit me up. She hit me up and was like, hey, listen, I'm not with this guy anymore. And I was wondering if that offer still stands for dinner. I was like, hell yeah, it does. And the rest is history with that. We clicked day one. And she is somebody that has made me such a better person. Like I look at relationships differently now because of her wisdom, her experience. She's not in the program. She's not sober, but doesn't really have, doesn't care to drink, smokes weed occasionally. We call him a normie, somebody who doesn't, have an issue with drugs and alcohol. And she is that to the T. You could take it or leave it. Very spiritually sound though. She's a personal trainer, yoga instructor. She's getting her 500-hour certification right now. I mean, she's very spiritually attuned. And that's something that I love about her because we align on that very well, just from different, circumstances. But we see eye to eye on a lot of those things. And then we end up getting pregnant together. And it's just like this is so sudden, but this is absolutely what needs to happen. And we have that little baby boy now. He's 4 months old. His name is Dash, and he is healthy as can be. And here we are just married in a house with a 4-month-old kid. I'm sober. I'm working at Cornerstone. I'm living this life that like I just did not know was possible for me. I mean,
it's like a dream for you, man.
Yeah, it is, man. And like the times when I was 21 at Florida State, the times I could get out of the apartment just was to go to get more alcohol or whatever at a grocery store or something. And I would be looking at these people in the grocery stores, like smiling, looking at their lists, laughing, just walking around getting groceries, just living a normal day-to-day life. And I'm just like, how the fuck do you do that? How are you just like living right now? How are you just like okay? It blows my mind that I couldn't be there. Like I wanted to so bad, but I couldn't be there. And like today, I just get to live that life every single day. So I have to remember, that's why I got to keep doing this deal too every day, because if I don't, like I'll forget.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
I'll forget what it was like to live in that misery of wanting to die, but not having the strength to do it. And, let alone the health consequences. I talked about it earlier, but I forgot to mention, like I'm 21 years old lying to, all my doctors about how much I drink, but blood tests don't lie.
No, they don't lie.
And I got to a point where I couldn't lie anymore. And like these doctors are like, hey, Cole, all right, what's up, dude? Look at this right here. And they're showing me like my liver or just something. And they're just like, you see that? I give you till you're about 25 years old. And then you're going to need a new liver or something. Like your kidneys are going to fail. You're going to die if you keep doing it. And they're just like, I'm assuming it's alcohol. This is usually what we see with alcoholism. And I was just like, I drink a little bit, but this is crazy, just downplaying it. And then like, the thought of death wasn't enough to deter me from drinking, because what do I do following that doctor's appointment? I go to my car and in the cup holder next to me is a water bottle. It's not water. And I take a swig. Like that's just full blown alcoholism right there. So like if I don't keep doing what I'm doing, that's exactly where I'll get back to. But this time I'm going to lose my wife and kid. I'm going to lose the ability to be in my son's life. I'm going to lose my home. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to tarnish my friendships, my relationships. I'm going to just spiritually go into a black hole. I'm going to isolate. I'm going to want to die every single day. But none of that is enough to keep a drink out of my hand. That's the craziest part about it, is the looming understanding of what could happen won't stop me from doing it anyways. There's an urgency, for me to do the things I do now because I know what's at stake. It's not just like me anymore. I understand what's around me and what I have going for me and how I've got this, whether I want it or not, now I got it, this responsibility to be a family man and be here and I do want it. So that's why I'm grateful for the opportunity to get up every day and try and grow and be a better person however I can. I'm not perfect at it by any means. I still struggle. I still slip. But like I said, with my wife making me a better person, she holds me accountable, and she really is here to help me grow through that shit. I couldn't ask for anything more in a partner.
There's so much meaning that comes from one being responsible for another life. You know, you've got Dash, and he's just a remarkably beautiful boy. Amazing to have him in the office the other day. Being a provider, right? I mean, you're providing for your family too, you know, and it's like, so you've got responsibility adds so much meaning to life.
Yep, man. Meaning, purpose. Like I said, like just that's very present in my life now is that sense of purpose and belonging and self-worth, honestly.
I mean, having everything, but having no responsibility, like how meaningless to a certain degree, right?
Yep. And that's what I wanted for so long. I just wanted.
That's what you knew.
Yeah. That's what I knew.
Yeah.
That's what felt right to me. That's what I felt entitled to. I mean, everything, you know? And then it shifted to, I want to help other people. You know, I want to be a source of, you know, comfort and like peace for other people, however I can. But I needed to do that for me first. I wanted to help people my entire life through my drinking and everything like that. I wanted to be somebody who could help people that you could look to, but I couldn't help myself. So like, you know, people say it all the time. How can you expect to help somebody if you can't even help yourself? So that's what I did. I had to help myself first. And then all these things that I wanted just magically
showed up,
just came into my life. And I was in a place to see that and experience that and accept that and be able to obtain that. Because if I'm not supposed to be here right now. I'm not supposed to be sitting in this office doing a podcast with you right now. Like I'm not. I'm supposed to be locked up in either a hotel room, a hospital, jail, or in a coffin. Those are the places that I left to my own devices. That's where I would be. So to be free, to be out here, to be conversing with you, like that's a miracle, right? And I don't always think of it like that. I don't. But in this moment right now, talking to you, I can see that. I can feel that miracle that's happening, you know? So the more that I can see life for what it is, the more gratitude that I can have, the happier that I can be, the more present that I can be, you know, and just the ripple effect that goes into that rather than like drinking, negativity, self-hatred, or all that ripple effect. You know, I'm just playing into the other side.
The thing is, too, that I think about is you're so purpose-filled now and you're giving back every day with your work. It's a solid reminder of what you've done, right? I don't know. I've been so moved by your story. I know that there's people who will be sharing the episode because of how impactful it was. And it's not the best part, but just showing how low people can get to before they, where is the bottom? You know, and some people, we all know people who are in desperate spots or doing poorly, but they haven't hit their bottom yet. Yeah. You know,
that's the thing, man. Everybody's got a different bottom. You don't have to be homeless and like drinking out of a brown paper bag. And like you could
comparison is the enemy too, right? I mean, and this happens a lot. Like I've talked to Marcus Clark about it, is that, you know, comparing one person's, who cares? Like, you know, because that can start to become a thing, you know, in the rooms, is kind of comparing yourself to the next guy and what he went through and what your recovery's been like and how long you've been sober and whatever else. So that's stuff that I've thought about. Marcus hasn't commented on that. He's commented on the comparison, obviously being a big issue, and it sets yourself up for a shame spiral too. It does. But yeah, so I would love to get you on some other time and talk about your diabetes journey too, because right now you're in a super, super cool spot. I mean, I remember when I first saw you, you came in, you were hypoglycemic. You needed to go to the gas station across the street to go get, go get some apple juice. Yeah. You came in, remember, because you, like you said in the beginning, because you wanted some counseling around or some psychological help around the struggle, or maybe even around the diabetes, so to speak.
Yeah, pretty much.
And we launched into Nutrition 101. From my background with lifestyle and nutrition around diabetes, I had a different perspective than you got from your first nurse who was educating you on diabetes, carbs.
Pretty much everybody else. Yeah.
And so then that kind of kicked off a whole set of things you learned. And so you implemented some things on your own. Again, it gave you some ideas. So you planted some seeds, you thought about things, you started implementing things, you started watching the reactions in your body to those things. And then just through those seeds being planted, you literally have gone off on you're an incredibly aware person with the type 1 diabetes, insulin, carbs, body reactions, all this stuff. Now,
Yeah.
why don't you kind of give a little bit of what have you discovered through this whole process from what was traditionally taught to you versus where you're at right now?
Yeah. I mean, what traditionally was taught to me was you want to eat an extremely low carb diet and keep the fats high and the proteins high too. So like that was the simple breakdown. But really, I don't even think they talked about the fats and proteins. I think they just said you need to eat this amount of carbs per day. That was really like the main guidance that I got around it. I figured, okay, I can't eat, high carb meals and, I can't have candy, drink soda, got to drink diet soda now, start drinking diet soda, all that stuff, man. But with no real understanding of what is in this stuff and what is it doing to my body. It was just carbohydrates is what people told me to look out for. That was it. So that's what I did my entire life. And then really it wasn't until we got together that I started to learn like what some of the different kinds of foods, like fried foods and like dairy, those were the two that stand out when we met that you told me to really look out for. It was like dairy and fried foods and to watch what happens when you eat either one of those things. And I did. And now I know that as insulin resistance because like I would pay attention to what I would eat. I'd give myself the exact dosage for the amount of carbs. And it didn't work. I would still like see a slow progression, steady rise in my blood sugar, even though I followed the timeline, I followed the 15 minutes before, like all, everything that they recommend to do to let the insulin work. And I would just see my blood sugar steadily rise and then just spike and then eventually crash because my body can, after a certain point, I guess, absorb the insulin that's in there. And then it just causes me to go super low. So I stayed away from those things and I started to see much better control, like just much better control, period. And then it was at this point too, when we got together, and I'll never forget it too. I always had a thing about having more than one site on my body. So like I had a site for my insulin pump. I was like, I'm not going to put another one on there for a glucose monitor. Not doing it. That's crazy. Why would I do that? And then I told that to my endocrinologist, one of the PAs that was working or something. And she just kind of like gave me a cornerstone approach and was just, and I didn't really know this lady at all, but she was like, when are you going to get over yourself and just do it for your health? So what? It's another site. You're going to do it or not? Like, get over yourself. And I was like, huh. I responded well to that. I was like, huh, okay. Yeah, that's fair enough. I'm going to get over that. I don't want two sites in my body and I'm going to put it on there. And so with what I was learning from you and then being able to see a graph of my blood sugar in real time, I had the working knowledge of what actually affects my body and my blood sugars. And I would say that to any, type 1 diabetic that doesn't have a CGM and you're having, some ups and downs, like get one if you're able to and see the real time of your blood sugar. See the foods that you're eating in the real time of your blood sugar and experiment and see what's going on. That's what I did. And, that's like you said, that seed was planted. I didn't stick with it the whole time, but I stuck with it long enough to understand, what happens with my blood sugars, which was super important and powerful. And then recently got into this program that I know you're actually about to start. It's called 75 Hard. And part of my challenge with that is eating a plant-based diet. And there's this book called Mastering Diabetes Method, and they talk about eating a whole food, low fat, plant-based diet. And this is also,
it's pretty high carb.
High carb, super high carb. And like, I never heard that from anybody that you could do something like that, but they're talking about insulin sensitivity. So now I'm getting this awareness around insulin sensitivity. And you were the one that planted that seed by saying like, it's actually the amount of insulin you need to worry about using because of long-term health effects with that. And it can block your artery or whatever you were saying about that kind of stuff. So then I like actually started to look at the amount of insulin that I was using. Never had thought before that was an issue. Your body produces it. Why would it be an issue if I put more in there? So that never clicked to me until we got together. And then these guys are talking about kind of the same thing. And then just overall long-term health effects, with the certain types of foods that you eat.
So something that people always talk about is like your insulin to carb ratio. Where did you go from and where are you at now? Because that's the hallmark of
Yeah.
whether you're insulin resistant or not.
Yeah. I was at a 10-1.
Okay, so 10
Put
carbs
in
for one
my
unit.
Yep,
Okay.
but that was put into that's what my pump's at. That's what
Okay.
my endo put it at the last time I saw them, because I was telling them I was having struggles with these highs. Really, it was because of what I was eating. But they're like, okay, we're gonna lower your insulin to carb ratio so you'll get more insulin. That should help.
Mhm.
Really, I was probably at like a 8-1, 6-1, because
Okay.
I was regularly doing the max bolus, which is 10 units on my pump, and then giving myself more after that. So I'm bolusing like 15 units sometimes per meal. That's an insane amount of insulin to use, honestly. But I did that very regularly. And I was using maybe 80, 90 units a day of insulin. It's a lot of insulin when you think about it. Now I'm probably at maybe like close to 18-1.
Wow.
Maybe. It could be higher than that, but I think that's just a safe guess to think it's probably doubled or tripled depending on what it was at before, because I've cut out all animal products, which I've seen a big difference in how my body reacts to using the insulin. I'm still eating a higher fat content than I would like to, and I think I'm still seeing some effects to that. But man, when I stay within the recommended range of what these guys are talking about, they're saying get 85% of your calories from carbohydrates, 75 to 80% carbohydrates, like 10 to 15% protein, and then like 10% fat, like very minimal amount of fat. When I stay within that, it's jaw dropping the amount of insulin that is needed for me and how quickly it works. They talk about that. Give yourself 15 minutes before, because really that's when it should start bringing your blood sugar down. But if you're insulin resistant, like I have been pretty much my whole life, it takes like 45 minutes to an hour maybe for insulin to start working in my body. But now it's like, not 15 minutes after I bolus, I'm good. Like it's trending down. I should probably eat. That's never been the case before. So when these people, these doctors and these providers are talking about insulin, bolusing times, like they should be asking how resistant you are to that insulin, because that's going to play a part. I fell into the population of not understanding like why my blood sugars are doing certain things when I follow the recommendations. You think if you follow the recommendations, you're going to see what you want to see, and then you don't, and you're just like, what is going on? But like, if you have the knowledge and understanding of insulin resistance, you're going to understand like, this is why this isn't working. And I think that will empower a lot of people with diabetes. Type 2 as well. I mean, that book talks a lot about type 2 diabetes, and you can straight up reverse that. There's plenty of testimonies in there that diet and activity and exercise alone, you will get off your oral medications. You will, if you are insulin, using injectable insulin, you won't need to use that stuff anymore. That's been proven. That's scientifically proven. That book is not just a couple of guys talking. They did an insane amount of research.
Yeah. Cyrus is a PhD and Robbie is definitely an experienced
they're
guy with this
well
stuff.
qualified and did the research they needed to do to write a book like that, because it's proven. You can't fight what they're saying. It's the truth. And if you are fighting it, the very end of that book, it gives you straight up meal plans to follow for a few weeks and some recipes. And they say, follow it, like actually follow it, and then monitor how your insulin usage is going. And like, they pretty much like stamp the guarantee that like you will use less insulin, you will be more sensitive, and you might need to stop taking some medications. And they always preface like, talk to your doctor, let them know what's going on, because more than likely you're going to have to make some changes. And that is exactly what's happening to me right now. I'm going to have to I'm seeing my endocrinologist next week, and I'm going to have to tell him like, this is what I'm eating now. This is what's going on. We need to change this. We need to change this carb ratio. We need to change this basal insulin. Like, we need to change a lot, because I'm seeing more hypoglycemia because of how well my body can use the insulin now.
Yes.
And that is just, for a guy like me, the amount of pressure, the amount of emotional, physical wear and tear that comes from dealing with diabetes every single day. If you can, I've found that like I would rather sacrifice the things I eat and some lifestyle choices than to have the misery of uncontrolled diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same thing with getting sober. I'd rather sacrifice drinking and social drinking and the ability to just like no responsibilities, do what I want when I want, for some lifestyle changes to have a better life. Like, I'm going to do those things. I think we're going to end on that, dude. You're amazing.
I love you. And I'm just so glad
Love you too,
that,
man.
yeah, just so glad that we've become friends and that you're sharing your light with the world and what you've gone through. You've certainly hit some lows. You have a lot to teach people. You're so young. You've got a long life. Think about all the years in front of you. This is kind of what I think about, is how many lives will be impacted by you learning this stuff so early, right? And not so. You've got that, and you've got a book in front of you for sure too. I know that there's a lot of inspiration that's going to be drawn out of your story too. So we got to get that thing out there too.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man.
Hey, everybody, I hope you really enjoyed that episode with Cole Armstrong. And, you know, is such an inspiration to so many, and he is such a pivotal key component to that Cornerstone program here in Scottsdale. I want you guys to reach out to Cole. In the show notes or some contact links for him. Let him know how inspiring he was. And if you guys are dealing with anything, reach out to him. Like, who else would you want to reach out to if you're in the depths of despair or dealing with addiction? Cole is your guy. I would look no further. He's going to understand you. He's going to be there for you. And he's going to be able to help you because he's been there. Now you've heard it. So anyways, for all that being said, I really hope you guys have a great week and stay tuned for the next episode of the Rise Again podcast. Hey, thanks for listening to the Rise Again podcast. Great episode, hey? You know what? I really love interviewing people, and I love getting people on who have things to share with the world. So if you have a really cool guest that you'd like to get on the podcast, email me and I will do my best to get them on the show. I hope you guys have a phenomenal week and stay tuned for the next episode of the Rise Again podcast.